This is what elite teams do to inferior competition. Throw down the hammer and don't stop. And USC did so this past week. And now they've got extra time to prepare for. We've had this process continue in stages, the transition to the Big Ten, and now finally on the field versus a Big Ten opponent. It should be quite the sight. USC at Michigan. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football for Trojan Conquest Live. To my left and to my right, Matt Zemek, Trojans Wire. Tim Prangley, Trojans Wire as well. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, and loving Tim Prangley's photo galleries at Trojans Wire. They're selling like hotcakes. Like, they're getting tens of thousands of views. Not just like 50 or 75, but many thousands of people love Tim's photography. He's good at it. So very, very happy to see Tim get rewarded for all his hard work.
Yeah, Tim, is this something that you've been adept at doing for a long, long time? A photographer, or is this just a kind of a trade that you've picked up?
I'm not gonna lie, I just really started, but I'll tell you one thing. You buy the right camera, the right lens, these modern cameras, I'm not going to make it seem like I'm some great photojournalist. These, if you're in the right spot, I mean, there's a little bit to it, right? You gotta position yourself, which is, I'm still learning. I'm seeing the same shot I'm done by another person has been shooting longer than me. I go, okay, that was the angle I probably wanted. But I mean, these cameras these days, you guys, they are cheap. I'm going to tell you that. But the lenses, how quickly they autofocus. I mean, just pretty amazing. But it's fun. It's really fun. I can't get enough of it, to be honest with you.
I gotta say, Matt Entz must be coaching Tim because he's in the right position to take these photos.
Well done. There. And like you, Matt, I keep seeing these pictures. I'll catch them following Tim on Instagram, and they're beautiful. They are beautiful, folks. So Trojans Wire, do some reading while you glance through the pictures as well from Tim and from Matt. All right. So the cameras have been upgraded significantly through the decades and ages, but the rankings, those are still stuck in the past. And basically what you believe about a team during the preseason, regardless of the evidence and the results on the field, seem to take a long time to nudge somebody to where they really deserve to be ranked. And for USC, it's a win over a quality LSU team, and it's a complete domination of a Utah State team that typically shows up as a decent member of the Mountain West and competes pretty favorably against power conference teams in recent history. And USC, of course, annihilated them 48-0. And now stand in the AP and the coaches poll rankings at number 11, Matt.
Yeah, and in the coaches poll, Oregon is number 6. So voters looked at USC and Oregon these first 2 weeks. They see the Ducks pull a clunker against Idaho. They see the Ducks barely skate by. Were outplayed from the line of scrimmage for most of that game. They get into a late game tie because of 2 long kick returns, and they squeak out a win. And meanwhile, USC's dump trucking Utah State, pitching a shutout. And yet, Oregon's 5 spots better. And as you alluded to, Mark, it's because of these baked in preseason rankings. If you start higher in the preseason, you're just like, we're not going to dock you. We might drop you 1 or 2 spots, but we're still going to keep you relatively high in the rankings as long as you win. And we're not treating teams' resumes and their bodies of work very seriously. You look at not just USC being 5 spots behind Oregon in the coaches poll, right there, 2 spots behind Oregon in the AP poll. So at least the AP had Oregon down to 9, knocking Oregon down a few spots more. At least you have that. But to have Oregon anywhere ahead of USC right now is unserious.
Well, they've got their fans. I mean, they've got a number of guys voting them still 4, 5, and 6, and that's helped pulling them, keeping them in that top 10. But yeah, it's pretty crazy because USC has shown on the field for the first time in a long time that they have a complementary team with not only a Lincoln Riley offense, but they've got a defense that's doing things that SC hasn't done in years. And it's strange that some of the voters are catching on pretty early. Like, there's a guy, Randy Johnson. I made a joke. I tweeted it out as a joke when I heard it, but 2 weeks ago after the LSU game, he had SC at ranked 3rd, you know. But there's guys like Adam Zucker, Matt Brown have him 6, you know. So there's some guys that see it. Then there's other ones. Well, I got a good laugh out of. There's a guy named Kirk Kenny. He had him like at 18 after LSU, and he still has him at 14, but not overly egregious given their 11th spot. But I'm not sure what these voters are looking at. I mean, are they watching the games? They can just peek the box score and say, hey, this is a pretty good USC defense.
Well, to Matt's point, it's almost as though it's treated as the preseason poll is substantiated by fact. They treat it as like, this is fact. And now these are just additional games that are going to somewhat skew our thinking somewhat. But we've already got, let's say, 100-game resume. And now we are just basically tweaking it just a little bit based on the results on the field, rather than just, that was fun in games in the off season. People love rankings. But let's start from ground zero and from the first result of the season and properly evaluate these teams. And Tim, like the writer that you just mentioned, I had USC at number 3 following the LSU win as well, because I considered it to be the combination of the 3rd best opponent and the 3rd best performance of the weekend.
Yeah, this is you guys are going to want to check it out. It's called College Poll Tracker. I'm not sure if anyone either in the chat or you guys watch it. But I've been using this for years just to get an idea at the outliers and where these voters are actually pitting people. And I mean, sometimes it's quite embarrassing to see how off some of the bias is within the media.
Yeah, and this is why Mark Rogers is the best in the business at ranking teams. You need to check out his top 25 rankings that make sense. And let's go over a few of these items from Mark. One is, like, you got to have UNLV in the top 25. UNLV looks like a juggernaut. I mean, UNLV has played elite football through 2 games. The Houston team that took Oklahoma to the wire, UNLV dump trucked Houston on the road. So you need to be giving UNLV credit. Mark Rogers gave UNLV credit. You need to have Washington State somewhere in that top 25. Washington State looks electric right out of the gate, an emphatic win over a cupcake, and then just blowing Texas Tech to smithereens. You got to have the Cougars in there. They've been lights out. You need to have Northern Illinois in there. You need to have Boston College in there. Winning at Florida State as a 17-point dog. I mean, and it was decisive. And we can say Florida State might not be good, but with just 2 games on the body of work, just 2 games on the schedule, and most teams playing cupcakes, going down to Tallahassee on the road at night, it's a much better win than what most teams have put on the board through 2 games. Arizona State, you also have to have Arizona State in the top 25, just smashing Mississippi State, also beating Wyoming. So ASU didn't play a cupcake and is 2-0 over, a Mountain West team and an SEC team. So Mark Rogers, he's on the ball. He has all of those teams in his top 25. He also has Vanderbilt in there still from the Virginia Tech win and then dominating a cupcake. That's how it should be done. And, I know that that's not how most people are hardwired, but hey, we just need to educate the masses, just need to build this culture, kind of rewire the circuitry of our brains and establish this is how you do it. It's not reputation. It's not preseason rankings. Those should not be the gravitational centers of all this. They are, but they shouldn't be. I mean, it's just what you put on the board in week 1, and then we reset in week 2. And of course, we're already seeing, right, the meaning of a result changes a lot from week to week. Like that Georgia Tech win over Florida State, it looks very different now from what it did at the time. We were thinking, oh, Georgia Tech might be really good. Well, Georgia Tech runs into a wall at Syracuse, loses on the road. It was much more about Florida State not being good than about Georgia Tech being really good. And so we see those changes in the value of a win, a loss, a result all the time. And it's processing that goes into the top 25, which makes sense here at the Voice of College Football.
And Matt, just to add another component to what it should not be, I don't believe the rankings. It shouldn't even be about our opinions. I have
Yes.
the opinion that Georgia's the best team in the country and Ohio State's number 2, and that there might be some separation after that. But they have yet to go out, Ohio State in particular, and prove that. They will have their opportunities. Ohio State is not even in my top 25.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's in the back end of my top 25. I mean, absolutely crushed 2 cupcakes. So,
Sure.
I mean, we can put them in the back end. But yeah, there are 20 or so teams that have better wins so far, like North Carolina winning on the road at night at Minnesota. It's a better win than what Ohio State's done. And it doesn't mean we think North Carolina is a better team or would be favored, but it's who has the better resume through 2 games. And it's just 2 games. So like, it's early. It's not as though this has cosmic meaning, but the point is about the integrity of a process. What have you done to this point? And we need to have that consistency over the course of the season.
I also think you brought up a good component, Matt, that the wins have to continually be each and every week reevaluated because teams change and they show us who they are. Right now, we're playing that game of so-and-so scored 50 points. Are they really that good on offense, or is so-and-so that bad on defense? Well, we need to see South Carolina. Wow, they woke up everyone with a 31-6 win as a 10-point underdog against Kentucky. Well, is South Carolina that good, or is Kentucky that bad, or was it just a fluke of a game? Well, South Carolina plays LSU this week. That will give us one more data point to become a little bit more understanding of who South Carolina is in particular.
Yeah, what's the old saying? The truth will out, right? The truth will eventually come out. These teams will eventually, in the fullness of time, be revealed for what they are going to become, whether it's great, whether it's good, whether it's ordinary, whether it's bad. But we just go on, how good of a win, how good of a performance, do you have on your belt right now? And it doesn't mean that it's anything's baked in or determinative of future weeks. And I think that's the thing that people really don't get. This idea of completely resetting the dial, a full rescrub, starting fresh every week. That's really what messes with people up. Because like, wait, we were number 3 and we won, so we should stay number 3. Well, but what if 5 other teams had a win better than what you had? Then they have to go above you. It doesn't mean you're bad. It means other teams are excelling. That's part of sports, right? You can play a great game, match, tournament, whatever, and not win because the other side's better. It's not a negative verdict on you. The other side is sometimes just better. Like you're A-, but someone else is A+. But that doesn't mean that you're entitled to a certain spot or a certain level of stature. If other people exceed you, we change it. That is the mindset of the top 25 rankings that make sense for Mark Rogers here at the Voice of College Football.
Speaking of a reset, so if we are doing in the spirit of what you guys both said, going into the season, we were looking at the schedule that USC was coming up against and really just kind of going, wow, this is going to be a hell of a gauntlet first year in. But now some of those teams that looked unbeatable, they kind of are showing, their warts a bit. And then a team like Nebraska, who maybe I was kind of slightly overlooking, is starting to look like they're beginning to play good ball and might actually be ready for USC, in a few weeks down the road. So I was curious, in the spirit of resetting, any changes to your expectations for USC's outcome and how you think they're going to do? Looking at how some of these teams played, I mean, like you brought up Matt, you brought up Oregon already. Penn State kind of had a struggle after looking great in that first week. Kind of have to reset a little bit there. What are your guys' takes? And is there any possible difference of opinions after watching USC through 2 weeks and then watching some of these other teams as well?
Go ahead, Mark.
My outlook on USC is twofold. Half of it has to do with them. Half of it has to do with Michigan. So USC, I wasn't surprised that they beat LSU. I actually predicted them to beat LSU. However, the manner in which they were able to be physical, at the point of attack, especially on defense, impressed me. Because as I stated after that game, and Matt and I had the discussion, of course, during the post game, was with all of this rhetoric in the form of what I just mentioned, with Team A performing a certain way against Team B in week 1, and then trying to determine, okay, how valid is that, or is who's good and who's bad? Then you got to see them play somebody else. I'm very confident that LSU is a good offensive team. They may not be Jaden Daniels' offense of last year, but I'm pretty confident they're one of the 25 best offenses in college football, and USC played them extremely well. And so just the the ability to go out there physically and in terms of technique, assignments, they were on point, close coverage, nothing was a gift downfield for LSU in that game. And then to come back this next week, and sure, USC is going to beat Utah State, but a typical USC team of the last 5 or 6 years probably scores 45, 50, 55 and gives up 24. It's a 55-24 game, not 48-0. Meanwhile, in Ann Arbor, I was going into that Texas game still somewhat holding on to, well, Michigan has been all of this for 3 years. Until somebody proves otherwise, I am going to trust the culture, the team, the toughness, and all of that. And if Texas was going to win, I thought that they were going to finally wear out the Michigan defense in the fourth quarter, because the Michigan offense was unable to keep up and giving too many 3-and-outs. And then Texas was going to wear down the Michigan defense. However, I saw Texas moving the football pretty much at will from the first drive of the ball game. It was not a matter of them wearing them down. It was them wearing them out downfield while Quinn Ewers picked them apart. So based on what I saw out of Miller Moss, and this is what impressed me as well on the flip side for USC against LSU, it wasn't, okay, LSU 2023 defense is horrible. Miller Moss is just throwing to guys that are just running haphazardly out in space in the middle of secondaries because of blown coverages and guys' inability to keep up. No, LSU's coverage was pretty tight the entire night, and Miller Moss was able to make what were NFL throws against good coverage most of the time. And so my opinion of USC has climbed considerably. Let's say from considering them one of the 20 best teams in the country to more like one of the 7 or 8 best teams in the country. And for Michigan, going from what I thought was maybe one of the 7 or 8 best teams in the country to trading places with USC.
Hard to argue with any of that. My main thing is it's early and teams go through so many identity and personality changes, not to imply that USC's identity is going to significantly change, but like USC is going to face a series of challenges. And it's not as though passing that first test against LSU somehow means that they're definitely going to pass this next test at Michigan. But on the whole and on the main through 2 weeks, it's very clear who the top 2 teams in the Big Ten are. And USC is one of them, and Ohio State is the other. It's Ohio State and USC on top, because we've seen Penn State wobble. We've seen Michigan, show alarming weaknesses. Iowa steps on a rake at home against Iowa State. The other teams that were with USC perceived as being below Ohio State and Oregon, and of course, Oregon looks very shaky, of course. We've mentioned that already on the show tonight. But the teams that were perceived as being one tier below Ohio State and Oregon before the season, of those teams, that was a quartet of USC, Penn State, Michigan, and Iowa. USC, by far, the best of those 4 through 2 games. But again, it's early. So, I'm not trying to assign any weight to this for any Michigan or Penn State or Iowa fans that might be popping in here at the Voice of College Football. I'm not saying this means this is how the season's going to unfold. This the trajectory has been established. No, but I am just saying through 2 weeks, Like, you could not have asked for a much better trajectory, scenario, series of plot points if you're a USC fan, because you're saying, hey, if this team can, just play solid offense, and I mean, we're already doing a 180 from a year ago. If this team could just play solid, high percentage, mistake-free offense, like, USC's not going to need 40 points to beat Michigan. If USC scores 27, 24 even, and doesn't turn the ball over and doesn't commit any huge special teams gaffes, USC wins. Like, and I don't think many Michigan fans would contest that. Like, that's the scary part. I think it's just kind of out there in the open. So, like, the margin for error for USC, there's some room for USC to work with. Not that the Trojans should tempt fate, but the point is that, like, this is USC's game to lose against Michigan. I don't think Michigan can win this game, in the sense of, I don't see Michigan making great, spectacular offensive plays and doing things to threaten USC. USC is going to have to give this game away. USC is going to have to make mistakes in order to walk out of Ann Arbor with a loss. If USC plays a relatively clean, relatively responsible, percentage-based game, field position game, Trojans are highly, highly likely to get a win up in Michigan.
And the good news is, traditionally, if you're looking at it from and you're looking at a USC team that's starting with a new defensive system, starting a brand new quarterback. You have some young players out there for SC, especially on the offense, especially on the line. You're going to want to get them early. And for them to come out strong early is a good sign, because I think, Matt, we talked this, I said it a bunch of times, Miller Moss is only going to get better. He's just only going to get better as the season goes along. That it was really loud on the field down at Allegiant. And so he passed that test pretty good, did not get rattled. Matter of fact, played some of his best football when it got really loud. He kind of rose to the occasion when LSU, looked like they were going to take over the game, and it got really loud. The LSU fans really got into it. And that's when Miller Moss actually played his best ball. So there's a lot of things pointing to success for USC. They got to stay healthy, which leads to one point that we saw in the Utah State game. I said, let's just get through this game and let's get out healthy. We saw the backup center, Killian O'Connor, go down. And the good news is that Lincoln Riley, after practice, said that it's not a long-term injury. So it's not a long-term sustained injury. So that's a good sign. What does that mean? Does that mean 3 weeks? I mean 4 weeks? I mean weeks? It doesn't. But he also brought up a really good point, because he was talking about that, as far as positions are concerned, having Killian go down sucks, but there is some depth there. They know that they'll have, like, Gino Quinones, who's one of the veteran linemen, who's just that guy, that Swiss Army knife that plays multiple positions, could slide inside to back up as well. So it's not the end of the world, but yeah, getting Killian back, it would be great. And it's good to know for the young man that he's also not out for the season.
And it also means Jonah Monheim really, really, really can't get hurt.
Well, I mean, no, I think that's what he's saying, though, is they feel they have capable backups in Quinones. So, I mean, that backup in Quinones. So, I mean, that they're not worried about if now our backup's gone. I mean, Grant, you're right. You don't want to go too far down on the depth chart, but realistically, there's going to be a big drop off no matter what if we lose Jonah to whoever comes in next.
I've got 3 topics that aren't separate topics, but just kind of 3 notes that I want responses from concerning what we saw against Utah State, and just see what you guys have to say. And you may have addressed, I'm guessing you've addressed 2 of the 3 during the post-game show. But Jaden Mayava, his performance, 8 of 11. Is there anything that we can take from that? Did he have to make any difficult throws, anything like that makes you more confident? If I would love to see somebody run the numbers on this at some point. How many teams make it through an entire season without losing their starting quarterback for at least 1 game? Meaning you may need a bridge for 1 or 2 games, hopefully not more. but how confident are you that Maava can carry this team against a mid-tier Big Ten team?
He's a different core. I mean, so watching Miller play and seeing how he's played, there's clear separation between the 1 and 2. But if we had a situation where Miller got hurt, what we saw from Jaden, in the spring and the fall, and then now into actually playing a little bit of mop-up time. I'm not sure, Mark, if you caught that play that he had where he did his best, like Caleb Williams impersonation, just dipping and dunking guys and then just using his athleticism and speed to get into the end zone. I mean, that's what you're gaining, with Maava. I think that the offense would look completely different. It would, that read options just on the table full on. I mean, it's going to be that would be used, I believe, a lot. Although I don't know. I don't know, because you're probably going to want to protect him in that situation where Jake Jensen's awesome, but I don't know if we want to go to that third level and feel as confident as we would with of Maava. But he just showed me that he's a very talented quarterback, and he's comfortable in Riley's system, and then he'd be able to do well. And I think it would just be a different flavor of this offense. I would be very curious to see it. I'm very happy with what Miller Moss is doing, but if Miller were to go down for a game like you're talking about, I do believe, remember that season when we had Mark Sanchez come in, when Booty hurt his hand. I mean, that was catastrophic. You want to have a guy that can come in and can win that game, and beat Notre Dame if needed called on. So yeah, I feel confident that he is that guy, but let's just hope it never happens.
I think one note to make about Maava from the Utah State game is, a year ago, the defense was so shaky under Alex Grinch that USC didn't put some games away until the fourth quarter. I mean, and some games were tense all the way through to the very end. But because the defense would give up 17 or 24, 27 points, in the games where garbage time, mop-up time was supposed to be given to the backup, that didn't happen until the fourth quarter. In this game, the team put things away, put things to bed so quickly that Maava was able to enter the game midway through the third quarter when it was 34-0. So like Maava played a quarter and a half. He wasn't just playing 2 possessions. He got several looks at the ball. So like that's more than a little bit of playing time and experience. And with his speed, and he certainly, as Tim said, it was like Caleb Williams with his pocket presence on that touchdown. Just the fact that he got in a lot of work against Utah State, like that in itself bodes well if he has to come in a break glass in case of emergency type situation. So, I definitely think that, against Minnesota, yeah, if you need Jaden Maava for that Minnesota game, he'd win that. The Maryland game, I think he'd win that. Maryland losing at home to Michigan State. Maryland's secondary looks awful. So I think USC, I'm more optimistic that trap game, and the kickoff time hasn't been announced yet, but that could be one of those nooners, 9 a.m. Pacific time. It could be a body clock special. I'm feeling a little bit better about that Maryland game now than I did before the season. I thought Maryland might be a little tricky, and still could be. But like from what I saw against Michigan State, Maryland's pass defense not going to cut it. So I think Jaden Maava could win that game. Rutgers would be a tougher test. Rutgers' physicality, Greg Schiano scheming on defense, that could be a little bit of a minefield. And Nebraska, similarly. But there's no doubt that Jaden Maava would slash and burn UCLA. And by the way, just as a quick aside, Indiana's favored by only 3 points against UCLA. I would say Indiana should be favored by 6.5. Like that's being undervalued by a field goal. Like the Signetti steamroller. That team is going places. UCLA is not going places. So anyway, Maava would torch UCLA right now if USC played the Bruins.
And we didn't get to see it, but he has a very live arm. I mean, the one issue, I've heard Gabe at Trojan Blade talk about it. The one issue he had last year when he was at UNLV is his decision making could be very questionable, but we have him working with Lincoln Riley in Lincoln Riley's system, a system that's very quarterback friendly. So, I mean, that could change that issue as well.
I already sent Matt his 12 pack of predictions to send back. Or I did not include the Indiana trip to the Rose Bowl, but Matt loving the Hoosiers here.
Lock of the week, stone cold.
Here's another response I would like to get out of you guys, whether this is truly concerning, but I saw tons of comments to our channel. So you've obviously already addressed it to a certain extent, but the dropped passes.
There were a couple easy touchdowns that were dropped. One in the flat to right in front of me to Zachariah Branch. I know he knows is just a routine catch and step right into the end zone for him. That you know, I'm sure he wants back. That one was just really, I mean, let's face it, it's probably inexcusable. And then Jacoby Lane, same thing. You know, a ball is, I don't know, those big old hands just at the goal line, just thinking about getting that touchdown instead of just catching the ball and just kind of falling into the end zone. There's you know, Miller Moss hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns. It's because his receivers have made some great catches. And then they've been dropping balls in the end zone, really not helping him out. But that'll come around. I mean, that's just early mental errors. The receiving thing that I'm excited about is just how much, and we can get into this a little bit later, is just the use of Lake McCree and the tight ends. I mean, that's just opened up this offense, and not just in the passing game, but yeah, I like when they're in that 12 personnel, and we had Eldridge at the H-back, and then you had Lake McCree lined up as a fullback, and then you have Eldridge and Noah just kind of come across, and you just saw Quentin Joyner just waltz right in with that lane for a touchdown. Just great play call. Big dudes out moving, big athletic dudes out in space moving. It's just really nice to see the way that the tight ends are being used, not just in the passing game, which has been gorgeous to see in those seam routes and stuff, but really just watching how they're blocking, and that's really we've only seen part of the offense. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it in 2 Saturdays from now.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to what Tim brought up, there was another play. This was a deep ball. Now, Miller Moss did underthrow the deep ball, so that has to be mentioned. You know, Miller Moss has not had great touch on his deep ball just yet, but Mekhi Lemon, he did have his hands on the ball. Now, the Utah State defender did recover, and he brought the hand through to rake the ball loose. But we saw this with Kyron Hudson against LSU. The ball's on his hands, the defender's coming over his shoulder, through his body, and raking the ball loose. I mean, you give the defender credit for not giving up on the play, by all means. And you say, hey, good defensive effort there. But you know what? At some point, the receivers, and this is a basketball term, need to box out. You need to be ball strong, and you need to bring that sucker in. So 2 straight weeks, we've seen the ball get on the hands, and then it gets raked loose. USC receivers will need to be stronger with the ball. And of course, going into the big house in Ann Arbor, you know, getting a 7 instead of a 3, probably going to matter at some point. And so, you know, it's a definite point of criticism. The receivers were the worst unit on the field. I mean, the rest of the team played pretty well. So it's not as though they were objectively bad, but they were definitely worse than all the other units if you were going to compare them. But the good news is, like, it was never going to matter against Utah State. But again, starting with Michigan, it's going to matter. And we need to see this wide receiver room really step it up and make more of those contested catches that haven't been consistently brought down through the first 2 weeks.
I think Matt's playing the least attractive supermodel game because it's kind of hard. Yeah, it's not like the wide receivers played poorly. It's just the fact that the running backs rushed for 249 yards, and Miller Moss did what Miller Moss does, and the tight ends look great. But, you know, talk about Lemon. Lemon had that great play, the only touchdown catch of the game, where you get him the ball with just a little bit of space, and he's near the goal line. He just makes it happen. He's kind of special when it comes for finding a third down, getting those sticks, or getting into the end zone. he just has a way once he gets the ball in his hands just to get those extra yards.
Okay, here's my next point. Not necessarily just on the Utah State game, but I sit here and watch. I can only focus on 2 games, but I throw on as many games as I can. So I'm sitting here noon Eastern, 3:30 prime time, and I got 3 games on all the time. I'm trying to watch as much football as possible. So I watch as much football as I possibly can. So I probably watch as much Mississippi State football as anybody outside of the Magnolia State. Woody Marks. I've seen this guy play a lot of football, but it's not like I was focused on, let's evaluate Woody Marks. How good is he? Now I'm sitting there on Saturday, and between the Ohio State duo, the Penn State duo, Jaquindon Jackson, former Utah back at Arkansas, had a remarkable game against Oklahoma State. He looked awfully impressive. I'm just wowed at these various running backs across the country. Dylan Sampson at Tennessee, a lot of really good talent where I'm just amazed at what these guys can do. Breaking tackles in the open field and so forth. And then I look at the USC box score and I just thought, I'm going to ask Matt and Tim, what is your fair evaluation of what level of back is Woody Marks?
You want me to go first, Matt, or why don't you go first?
USC didn't run block all that well against LSU. Run blocked a lot better against Utah State, as you would expect. But I like Woody Marks' burst. What I really like, north and south. Like he is not a hesitant runner. He gets through that main gap. He explodes. He's decisive. So that's a good early sign that he's trying to get as many forward yards as possible. Raleek Brown, what was his problem, right? He would dance around. He wouldn't make the right cut, the right read. He took too much time to process plays, make decisions. You're not seeing that with Woody Marks. He is very decisive. His one really big mistake so far this season was that lateral against LSU. Fortunately, USC recovered, but the game really could have blown up if LSU had recovered that. I think he got the message. He didn't do any dumb stuff against Utah State. So really, as long as he's not making weird plays as he did against LSU, he looks like a keeper. I would also say that Quentin Joyner looks like he's going to continuously get his share of carries. Well, that's one thing I really like about the running back room in general. They're not overloading the RB1 the way they did with Travis Dye, the way they did with Marshawn Lloyd. Right now, it's really a two-man show. And you saw Brian Jackson get a little bit of work, and Amarian Peterson as well, scoring the touchdown in mop-up time. It's good that they got some carries. But when the game is in the first half and the main rotations are unfolding on the field, it's a two-man setup, not a one-man setup. That's encouraging, and I hope we see more of that. I hope we see both Marks and Joyner, get at least 12, 15 touches respectively against Michigan, so that USC can throw Michigan a change of pace.
And that's why, if you guys remember, we did our prediction show, we were talking about, are we going to see 1,000-yard rusher? That's why I was quick to say no, but not because we couldn't. It's because he's going to be splitting a lot with Quentin Joyner. I've been talking about Quentin Joyner since last year, since the spring game where we were, and since that San Jose State game. He's the guy also, Matt, like you're saying, just, plant his foot, one cut and go. And he's gone because he really can break those angles. He is fast and big. And talking about fast and big, like you said, Brian Jackson and Amarian Peterson just showed he can bang too. There's a lot of talent in the running back room. And I'm comfortable going up against pretty much anybody. I know some great backs, and Ohio State, brought in Judkins, and he's a great back, but I don't think we take much of a step back with the backs that we have, to be honest.
Want to remind everyone that we go live each and every Monday through Friday on the national channel for the college football show. It's every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, 7 Pacific. So you could watch me for breakfast. And it's basically my rants, your calls, and great guests at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Every Monday through Friday, I vowed to go live every day from the end of media days all the way through the national championship game. All right. What's our next? I'm out of topics.
Well, there's a really big topic sitting around. USC just picked up 2 great recruits. We talked about this on the call-in show that, there's a lot. People were getting excited about this coaching staff, but they kind of pulled back because they want to say, we want to see it on the field. And I kept saying, be patient, you guys, be patient. If they show it on the field, which we all believe they're going to do, then you're going to see the recruits lining up. I mean, literally lining up. And this week you got 2 really good defensive players. You got Ty Jackson, who's a linebacker, 6'2", 205. I mean, the guy, everybody in the country wanted this guy. So whether you're a 247 ranking him somewhere like a 4-star-ish, or if you're like the ESPNs and the On3s ranking him as the best linebacker in the country, you could go there. But one thing you do know is with the laundry list, when you have like Penn State, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, I mean, you name it, going after him as the big guys, and he's visiting these schools, the kid's really good. And, having him come in and with Jaden Perlot, who's again another huge name, and Matai Tagoai, that both those guys, that's a hell of a linebacker class if USC brings that in. And Matt is gonna be smiling ear to ear because it's Matt Entz, it's Danton Lynn. Look at the showcase that these linebackers are giving for these guys to come in and play in. I mean, just look at how well our linebackers are playing. Guys are going to line up. I mean, they want to play. They want to be showcased. They want to get ready and be developed. All the things, USC is checking the boxes. And if this defense keeps showing that it's elite, that's going to happen more and more often.
Yeah, I mean, with the Ty Jackson commitment, like it didn't take long for him to be convinced, right? And, that is, boy, I mean, like that is proof of concept. That is recruiting momentum. And so if this just begins to pick up more pace, like if USC can just get past Michigan, then you're looking at a season that could be really special. I mean, who knows just how much recruiting momentum could emerge for this program. So, yeah, I mean, and we talked so much in the offseason about NIL, and not to dismiss the importance of that, but numero uno, if you can do it on the field, you're going to recruit yourself. And USC is quickly smashing that Lincoln Riley doesn't take defense seriously narrative. This is how you engineer a very swift turnaround, much more than NIL. Again, not that NIL doesn't matter, but this is where you can plant your flag and really make the biggest possible national statement.
Folks, we are totally invested here, not just to provide the best in USC football coverage, and I've done extremely well in surrounding myself. This is the key to leadership right here. Surround yourself with talent. Even if you don't know what you're talking about, surround yourself with talent. So we got Matt, we got Tim, of course, but in also building a community here, we want to make sure that you're invested in what we do, just from the standpoint of the engagement in the crowd. So we are going to continue going forward, but with everyone who subscribes here for free, it's just a click away to subscribe here at the USC channel, that you will be the ones taking part in the chat, meaning the chat will be simply just all of you who are subscribed to the channel. Again, doesn't cost you anything, no obligations other than just to click and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football USC. Therefore, you will be able to take part in the chat.
I've actually been laughing to myself at like all the people that normally are in the chat that aren't here. I'm thinking, wow, all those guys probably aren't subscribed to our channel, but yet they're in our chat 24/7. Imagine that. It's a bit of a quiet night in the chat.
Oh, it looks a lot different.
We really appreciate those of you guys that are here and celebrating with us. But going back, sorry, so Ty Jackson gets all of the rapping and stuff like that. But we also, Viliami Moala is a big defensive tackle out of I believe Utah. I'm almost certain he's from Utah. I'm not certain of that. Don't quote me. But we've been talking about wanting to get that. We're having trouble in the transfer portal, trying to get somebody out of the portal. He's a 26 guy, so he's not coming right away. But he's a big dude. Already he's a 26 guy. He's 6'3", 305. and he's probably just going to get better. But Greg Biggins, anybody that follows sports, if you're a USC guy, you follow sport recruiting, Gerard Martinez's name, right off the way, Scott Schrader's name right off the way, and Greg Biggins. And Greg Biggins said, true knows who can handle double teams, stuff the run, win the one-on-one matchups with strength and toughness. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a nose guard to me. That's somebody that I want setting the middle, setting that defense. And he seems like a great guy to bring in and develop with some dog work under Coach Henne.
You never know if USC goes to the playoffs, who they might be facing, maybe somebody that they've possibly never faced. And this is my best attempt at a segue, because not that I don't have enough shows to host right now. I did the count the other day. This is now 16 weekly shows. And so we're adding Ole Miss Live Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be on the main channel just to get us cranked up and started up before we transition to the SEC and the Ole Miss channels that we just launched here in the last few days. But Ole Miss Live with myself and Leanne Herring from the Rebel Walk. So an hour of Ole Miss football talk.
Congratulations, Mark. And worth noting, Trojans Wire staff writer Donovan James, or he also goes by Don James, he's doing his Heisman rankings. He has Miller Moss and Jackson Dart 5 and 6 right now. Wouldn't that be a heck of a plot point if Miller Moss and Jackson Dart are both in the Heisman mix late in the season? Obviously, it's early. I'm not putting too much focus or energy into Heisman stuff. Winning is the thing. Winning games is my point of emphasis. But just something to think about. Miller Moss and Jackson Dart, could they be locked in a Heisman battle? Wow, that would be something.
For as much as I love the Heisman Trophy, or at least as a kid, I was enamored with the Heisman Trophy and still have them all memorized back to, I started to lose it in like the late 50s, early 60s, but have the rest of them all lined up by memory. I will say that it reminds me that our buddy Steve Merrill from Wager Talk, who provides his exclusive under the radar selection for us on Patreon, he asked me when we did a preseason special on various conference championship, national championship odds, and Heisman as well. We were talking about the front runners. Then he said, if you go down the list, Mark, because he gave me metrics to basically how much more profitable it is to make a wise selection down the list, that a lot of the Heisman Trophy winners like a Devontae Smith comes to mind well down the list during the preseason rankings. And again, it's very early, as Matt is underlining here, but he said, if you can give me one name down the list, who do you like? And I said, Miller Moss. So we shall see. One big game down for Miller Moss, but I was super impressed, I got to say. That game to me was a different test than the bowl game. So like you guys, I was impressed with the bowl game. He played lights out in the bowl game. I just think that the LSU coverage was so much better on these receivers, and he had to make such more difficult throws in this Sunday night game that I just thought, wow, is this like Aaron Rodgers out there?
Well, for as many knocks as he gets from really even in the spring from some of his own fans, I remember reading on message boards and seeing on DMs, he sure as heck could get the ball into tight windows. I mean, there's his ability to see the play, throw with anticipation. You can't, there's those guys, right? We've had them. I remember Carson Palmer, early Carson Palmer, any gunslinger, right? Who has a huge arm, thinks he can fit those windows, but just isn't doing all the math, in his head to get the ball there. Then you got a guy like Miller Moss, who may not have the arm of a Carson Palmer, but the way he throws in anticipation, the way he just sees the play, he can read the defense, knows where it's going to end up. Just a student of the game, and like Lincoln Riley said, the game just slow. That's the most beautiful thing I love to hear about my quarterback. The game slows down for him. He doesn't look rattled. He looks like he knows where he wants to go with the ball, just like great quarterbacks do. And The biggest thing for me wasn't even the bowl game. It wasn't. I mean, that was great watching the bowl game. It was just the way. It was the way that Lincoln Riley shut it down. Basically, said, "Well, he probably just chased everybody off, etc." But also the confidence he has in Miller. I mean, when it comes to quarterbacks, I don't think there's anybody that's going to question Lincoln Riley's thoughts on who he wants. People were talking about Julian Lewis as Juju that, blah, blah. We want this. We want that. Hey, look, you guys be quiet. Just let Lincoln cook. Let him figure out what he wants, get it together, and develop the quarterback because his track record's insane. And so his confidence in Miller Moss, I knew we had something special.
And this in light of an off season in which there were a lot of high profile programs that had quarterback decisions to make, and many pulled the trigger because the quarterback transfer portal list was mighty deep, but many of them stood pat. Hugh Freeze comes to mind at Auburn. Bad move. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, of course, the starting quarterback, had a big night on Saturday night against Appalachian State, but unless he reverses his recent trends over the last year and a half, and I know Dabo Swinney runs that program much different, but that should have been a transfer portal addition and a team that USC sees in less than 2 weeks. Michigan, transfer portal, that should have been a move made by Sharon Moore and company, but USC didn't make the move, but that is proving to be the right move.
I'm just gobsmacked, Mark. I podcasted about this on my Patreon podcast, Get Off My Pylon, earlier today. Just what in the Sam Hill convinced Hugh Freeze to double down on Peyton Thorne? What was he seeing? And in a similar vein, what convinced Mike Norvell to go to DJ Uiagalelei as his successor to Jordan Travis? I mean, that's astounding. I mean, now, with Notre Dame, I thought Riley Leonard was pretty good at Duke. I thought that was a situation where Notre Dame did fine. I thought Iowa did fine with Cade McNamara. Now, those are cases where you have to raise questions about what the coaching staff is doing. But Peyton Thorne was not very good last season at all. And for Hugh Freeze to double down, I just can't believe it. Because Hugh Freeze, he's beaten Nick Saban twice. He's won a New Year's Six Bowl. The guy knows what he's doing, and people can snarkily say, well, he knows how to put the bag in front of recruits or whatever. But that point aside, you don't just back into beating Nick Saban twice. You have to know a little something. And so for him to double down on Peyton Thorne, gosh, gracious sakes almighty. I can't believe that. I still can't.
So again, Mike Norvell doing an outstanding job. Otherwise, at Florida State, you ran down the accomplishments of Hugh Freeze. That just underlines what Lincoln Riley has done in evaluating quarterbacks properly.
No one does it better.
Subscribe to the USC channel to enter the chat. Yes, again, as Tim reminds me all the time, and Tim is fervent about this, folks, and I know you all appreciate everyone who watches this show and watches the other show on a regular basis, and of course the post-game show has to. It transcends across the airwaves of the Wi-Fi distance between all of us. Tim's passion, not just for USC football, which is first and foremost, but his passion for this channel, for these shows, and for wanting them to be as good or better than anything, and to build a community here. So he is very passionate, in particular, about building a community here that USC fans can come to and know and trust and feel like they're in a good place. And that's what we want to do for all of you.
Well, I knew we'd be falling on a sword if we did this, but I figured it's the Utah State game, we're excited about it. And actually, if you look at all the numbers, you should be very excited about the first shutout since 2011. But I knew the fans weren't going to be. So why not give it a try? Because but I am shocked. I mean, I am really surprised how just the names I normally see in the chat aren't there. So I got you guys. I see that you're not, I make the joke that you guys, I look at the numbers and more than half of you guys aren't subscribed. You guys are showing up every week chatting away in the chat, but you're not subscribed to the channel. What are you guys doing? It doesn't cost you a penny, but Appreciate everyone being here, subscribed or not. A War Room, what a chance of landing Elijah Griffin. They get better with every win, but like we said, pulling Georgia defensive linemen out of Georgia when you Kirby Smart still there, and it's not just that they're always in it for national championships, but also the fact that their proven production of getting guys into the NFL. It's a hard sell. It's just hard to pull those guys out. The fact that Elijah is looking at USC seriously, that's a testament to our coaching staff. So this one is going to play itself out. But I'll tell you, every marquee win that USC gets this year, every game where this defense looks like it's legit and just needs to keep building momentum, you're going to see you just win. The recruits are going to come. They want to see they can be successful. And clearly, we're only 2 games in, but obviously a small sample size. But what we've seen, I don't see his defense slowing down. Matter of fact, again, they're still in. They got the basic install. They're going to be adding more and more to this thing. So it's going to, again, just like I said, Norm Moss to get better every game. This defense is to get better every game. So let's see what they can do, and then we'll talk about Mr. Griffin sometime in late November and December.
Yeah, this defense gets 2 weeks to prepare for Michigan. I think Chef Danton Lynn is going to cook up something pretty good. Also worth noting, while we're talking about just USC defensive recruiting, there was someone on the field, on the sidelines at the Utah State game. His name was Aaron Donald. Snapped some photos with Coach Henny. Woof, woof. So Aaron Donald was a very visible presence Saturday night. Don't think recruits weren't paying attention, and they're seeing this thing come together with Coach Henny, with Danton Lynn, with Matt Entz, with Doug Belk, with Taylor Mays. You can now see a new identity, brand, reputation being built, and I don't think this defense, against the competition it's facing, it's going to be hard for this defense to play a really bad game. On our preseason statistical prediction show, the week before the LSU game, I came down on the number 25, for points allowed per game. I think if this USC defense can allow 25 a game, score an average of 34, right around there, sign me up. At this point, I'm thinking that if this defense allows anything over 20 per game, it might be a little bit of a disappointment. That this defense should be able to get to a 20 points per game total in terms of what it allows against the competition that it will be facing. And I also go back to the point that if USC does score in the mid-20s at Michigan, the only way USC loses under that scenario is, with a bunch of turnovers, with special teams mistakes. If USC doesn't make, any really huge mistakes and it scores in the 20s at Michigan, book it. USC wins. That's how good this defense is right now.
And Matt, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, we probably faced, I don't know, maybe most likely the best offense, best quarterback combination, kind of running back, except for Penn State. But who else do we see on Penn State, besides Penn State, that we see putting 30 plus points up on this defense? I mean, that's not really a put down, but the teams we're playing, they're not built that way. They're built to stop points and try to plug away at points. Maybe Nebraska could put up some points, but there's really not a lot of teams that SC is going to be facing that have the ability to throw 30 plus points up against USC. So Matt, and there's some teams, and I'm just going to say, I'm not going to name names, but there's some real dog offenses that we're going to be playing. So we're going to see some of those lower ones. I mean, right now USC's at 10 points per game. It's obviously not going to stay at that. We just played Utah State to shut them out. That's obviously a big part of that. But there's going to be some defenses that USC is going to hold to a very low score as well on the schedule. Will they be able to play at this level the rest of the season? If so, then Matt, I think you're 20 points. I think I said 22 points, I believe, in our prediction show. So I mean, yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about 22 points, but we'll see. We got to let it play out, right?
And Mark, just correct me if I'm wrong. When scoring defense is tabulated, that's it. The scoring averages do not factor in defensive touchdowns, correct?
It's all
it's
scoring.
it's just points given up, right? It's a flat measurement, or do they adjust for special teams and defensive touchdowns?
That's points
It
per
is
game.
a flat division problem.
So like so that just brings up a point about analytics. We should be able to have divided statistics, right?
Oh, yes.
There should be special teams points per game. There should be offensive points per game. There should be defensive points per game. It's pretty crazy that in 2024 we don't have those subdivisions of
net rushing yards,
averages allowed and scored.
Yes, the sack statistic is horrible in college football versus the rushing yardage, and that amplifies how bad Iowa's offense has been the last, let's say, 5 years. But looking at the last 2 years, in scoring less points, this is insane when you think about it. In scoring less points than any power team in the country in the last 2 years, they got more defensive points scored added to that total. They had more pick sixes and fumble, scoop, and score touchdowns to add to that. That's incredible. That's how bad they were on offense.
Yep, pretty astonishing.
And D'Anton Lynn, by the way, Matt had just mentioned him preparing for Michigan. I've got one hint for you, Coach Lynn. If Alex Orji's in the game, as Michigan did this 3 times against Texas, all he knows how to do is run the ball. It astounds me that they didn't maybe give him 3 throws out of that formation to try to burn a defense and just rep him over and over on just like 3 pass plays over and over and over. But I saw that 3 times against Texas and I thought, they know it's coming. And sure enough, they stuffed him all 3 times.
Well, we're really looking forward to the Michigan preview show next Tuesday when we get to break that game down in greater depth and detail.
Absolutely. Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, please subscribe to the channel and, of course, support what we do here across the board. Tim and Matt get together on Friday nights. Again, it is Friday night for the big call-in show prior to Saturday's typical game. But, of course, SC with a week off to prepare for Michigan. All right, Matt, what's going on at Trojans Wire?
Well, Tim's galleries. Obviously, we're going to be talking more about recruiting. No game this upcoming Saturday, so a little bit of a lull. And I'm going to spend my Saturday scouting the Big Ten, looking at the Big Ten, writing about the Big Ten. But starting on Sunday and Monday of next week, we're going to be collaborating with our partners at Wolverines Wire. Going to go really deep into this game, Q&As, debates, plenty with Wolverines Wire, and it's editor Isaiah Hole, who's excellent covering Michigan. So really a lot to look forward to next week. This week, of course, we're just going to kind of follow the Big Ten since we'll have an off week and a chance to just study our new conference.
And don't forget, we're also meeting up with the guys on Voice of College Football Michigan over with John D'Adamo and TJ. We're going to get together to do that. I don't know how are we doing it? Maybe by broadcasting on both channels. I don't know what we're doing, but should be fun. Maybe we'll visit them. They'll come visit us. We'll do 2 visits because I'm sure it'd be worth the matchup.
Yeah, I think we're visiting their show, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what was in the works, but yeah, I don't have exact confirmation.
Yeah, I will have to get us a Michigan guest for next Tuesday night, and I was giving everyone a glimpse at Tim's handiwork. So again, go to Trojans Wire for the gallery.
And one last thing that we didn't really get into. Hang on if I can find it. Where is it? Cancel. We had I got this ready for the call-in show, but we never got around to it. And Trojan fans, look at how beautiful that is. That's symmetry for you. So you had both the number 5 jersey and the number 13 jersey retired. Reggie obviously back in the peristyle. and then having Caleb Williams 13 retired, his jersey retired. Although it's crazy, you have Mason Cobb running around out there with that jersey to be the last one probably in Cardinal gold to wear it. But just soak that in. I mean, there's not many, again, with the Peristyle and the Coliseum and then all those jerseys, and just think about all those dudes running around on that field. There's just really not a lot of stadiums like the LA Memorial Coliseum, and putting them all there the way they're laid out really does. I mean, you could just quickly see just runs. I mean, I'm not old enough. Sorry, Mike Garrett, I'm not old enough to remember some of your runs, but all the rest of them, I definitely just you get the name of a Garrett, OJ Simpson, Charles White, Marcus Allen, Carson Palmer, Leinart, Bush, and Williams. Everyone has that picture of it, and having those all rightfully now, screw you NCAA, having them in the Coliseum it's about time. It's well overdue.
We've got more people in the chat than we have for the entire 65 minutes. So you know what you do. You just go back to the beginning and you watch what you missed, and you can catch up with the rest of the debate, analysis, everything that we've provided here for the last 65 plus.
And you, Mark, you said I'm really good at promoting this channel. Well, I believe we've gone an hour and 6 minutes, and I don't believe we actually have said, hey guys, if you appreciate the show, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. Because I think, Matt, we need to start popping on live for some call-in shows just for the heck of it, out of the blue. I mean, I might just do it in the middle of a Thursday night just for the heck of it, one of these nights, just to catch some of you guys on your toes and see and show an appreciation to all the people that are subscribed to the channel.
I'm all for that. All right. For Matt, for Tim, I'm Mark. We'll be back here next Tuesday night, of course. But in the meantime, Trojans Wire every day. Matt and Tim on Friday night with a big call-in show. We'll see you then.